A Russian ballerina, stomping on a bureaucrat. A perky suburban housewife who just got into scat. It's whimsically volatile.
We're back. Here we are.
And we wanted to talk a little bit about speaking from the heart.
Speaking from the Sincerity, the lost art form of open-hearted communication.
Yes.
So one thing, a little tidbit I'd like to share, and I hope I'm not speaking out of shul. As a lot of listeners know, Drag Race is a reality TV program.
Yeah.
It is unscripted. Mm-hmm. There are no. We do not have writers who we're not fed lines. We don't go into the confessional rooms and read from a script.
Right.
We're asked questions. We're asked to comment, to explain, to elaborate about our intentions, our motivations, why we did and do what we do in the context of the competition,
right?
In the workroom, in the challenges, what we observe, how we interpret certain behaviors, yada yada yada. Mm-hmm. And I'm really proud of the way that I behaved myself on Drag Race, especially on All Stars 2, because I think that sincere communication is not very easy for many people.
Sure, absolutely.
And especially online.
Uh-huh.
On forms of social media, sincerity is difficult to identify because when someone is using language that is meant to be encouraging and thoughtful and sincere, it's often called out as being disingenuous, mm-hmm. opportunistic, or plain out shamelessly self-promoting, mm-hmm. right? And a good example of this is like when you see like a yoga person post like a nearly nude picture of their like sweaty hot body in a contorted pose, and then the caption reads like, "Change comes from within." You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's like, well, what are you really selling here, honey?
Sure, right. Know? What's the reaction that you want to?
Yeah. Are you just hawking them titties, or are you trying to trade in Vedic philosophy?
Yeah.
And that's all, but that's really just the interpretation. Mm-hmm. It comes down to what is the intention and what is the motivation and what is the desire there. In America, sex sells.
Sure.
So it's often very complicated, but in terms of speaking from the heart, it's often, what I've observed is that it's often seen as not very cool. Mm-hmm. And so it's discouraged.
Right.
And a lot of communication is relayed in an ironic or self-deprecating tone or voice. Yeah. And the challenge of speaking from the heart on Drag Race these days is that we've seen it all before.
Sure.
We've seen it all before. Now it's like a lot of the behaviors on Drag Race are immediately they're witnessed and simultaneously interpreted in relation to what has come before.
Sure.
So for example, like when the cast images are presented for the first time, when the promo rolls out, it's like, oh, that's the Pearl.
Yeah,
that's the Tatiana. Oh, that's the Tyra.
Right.
Oh, that's the Willem. Like mm-hmm. I remember when the season 7 images rolled out, I was lambasted online for being a Willem ripoff.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, because of the look and because of my kind of
cheeky nature.
My cheeky nature, exactly. And my I in the promo I appeared to be very ironic, sarcastic, aloof, and kind of like shit disturby.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And of course I also looked like a slut. And I got to tell you, there's more room in the world for more. There's plenty of room for white blonde sluts out there. The more the merrier. But when I look back on on season 7, I had a lot of moments where I felt that I didn't perform to my best, but the one thing that I'm particularly proud of, and I think speaks to the nature of Drag Race, is the sort of speech that I gave at the finale or the last episode of All Stars 2, where you kind of plead your case for why you should win.
Yeah.
And I admittedly am not a very I'm not a ruthless competitor. Mm-hmm. That's not my nature.
You're more of a ruthless achiever, right?
I'm a ruthless achiever when it comes to myself.
Right.
I'm my own worst critic and I'm my own worst enema. So in terms of, people want to call out behavior for being fake.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that fake is way too vague of a term.
Sure.
Because we're not able, I think that a lot of viewers are not able to clearly identify what kind of language is reverent, irreverent, sincere, ironic, opportunistic, or straight out exploitative.
Right.
It's like a lot of times people will call out the moments where a person is at the makeup station and they're sharing personal moments from their past, and it's kind of, some people view it as exploitative, some people view it as opportunistic, others view it as intentionally manipulative, trying to get the audience on your side. Like, well, hey guys, my whole family was mowed down by a giant lawnmower. Can I win the crown? Stuff like that.
Yeah.
Of course the strings start swelling in the soundtrack, and then, oh, now we know this is for the time I'm supposed to cry,
right,
or whatever. But
whereas you could look at it as a very sincere moment in the show. I always look at it as like, okay, we're getting to know them. We're getting to know everyone's struggle.
Right. And it all happens within a context in a 43-minute reality format.
Yeah, yeah.
It's not like we're not watching high drama. It's not Shakespeare.
And it's also intended to provoke and elicit emotions.
Yeah. Yeah. Because like Rue has said many times, one of the thrusts of the program, one of its mission statements is the tenacity of the human spirit.
Right.
And Drag Race means many things to many people, but my instincts on the show were to be real.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember walking in the workroom and having extreme anxiety about how my drag character would be perceived and received by the general public outside of a performance context.
Yeah.
But what I was able to do on the at the end of All Stars 2 was I remember being in the workroom. I didn't write anything down.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, speaking from the heart, it has to be in the moment. It has to be informed by the present moment in terms of who I'm talking to, a clear and honest kind of consideration of what I'm feeling and what motivates me, and a sense of honesty, but also lightness. And I remember that I wanted to keep it short and sweet.
Yeah.
And I wanted to keep it real. And I mined emotion in a way that almost made me cry legitimately.
Yeah.
But I plugged it up because I wanted to kind of go deep, but then just keep it light.
Right.
And and speaking from the heart means being real. And nowadays, I don't know that is even really possible.
Really?
Yeah.
You mean that moment of going in there and just
laying it all out?
Yeah.
Laying it all out, because of course it's edited. I don't know. I've always been able to maintain a level of realness, but it's all subject to interpretation.
Uh-huh.
And it's like you can be intentionally manipulating people into trying to love you,
right?
Or you can just be telling the truth. At the end of the day, you don't really have much control over what is perceived and interpreted. All you have is your gut,
right?
And I remember, Rue said, "Bring the realness."
Yeah.
So make it count. Say what you really feel. Make it honest. And that's what I think I managed to do on most of the show. But I've resisted that in a lot of interviews. Mm-hmm. And I've avoided using my sincere voice only in the service of entertainment, not really intentionally trying to obfuscate my real feelings or intentions, but I'm a trickster, and I'm an entertainer and an artist, and I like fucking with people.
Sure. And also, do you think that it has to do with the context?
It does.
Because, you're not at RuPaul's show, you're at an interview where it doesn't mean as much.
No, I'm in drag too, but I've struggled. I had dinner last night with a friend that I met because of the show. Mm-hmm. He's a really cool guy. He's a drummer for the band Rancid, Brandon Steinekert. I met him and his girlfriend, and we became really fast friends in a way that is kind of, I think you talked about is like, or Devin talked about, it's like common in Hollywood. Uh-huh. You can be best friends right at once. But we vibed right away. We had this really like deep and easy and effortless kind of connection.
Sure.
And he was like, I remember telling me, he's like, don't ever feel like you have to be on around us.
Yeah.
Because we like you.
Right.
And that really stuck with me. And, it is difficult to be a public figure or to be admired for your personality or your perceived way of being.
Right.
And with that comes almost like an inability to show your vulnerable side.
Or any other side.
Other than on high alert, full tilt, and entertainment mode.
Right.
And then you lose track of, okay, well, who the hell is the real me?
Yeah.
Because my drag character is a Russian whore with an accent, but I never really did it on the show.
Right.
And, but that was my drag character. It's acting.
Yeah.
It's acting.
Right.
It's a character.
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with me. I chose that voice because in order to project an air of world-weary, jaded confidence, Russian seemed appropriate. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But now I'm having to, I'm getting the opportunity to explore the fact that regardless of the accent and without, ditching the character, I can still have an articulate and semi-coherent point of view, just naturally.
Yeah, exactly.
Without trying to impress anybody.
Like Devin was saying.
Yeah.
Just be
Just
you.
be yourself.
Right.
Because that's what we want.
Yeah.
And then the work is, okay, so I've got that. It's just about choice, restraint, and boundaries.
Yeah.
Since sort of like taking a break from drag, I've had the discipline to tune out the noise.
Yeah. And define the noise a little bit.
The noise for me is social media.
Okay.
I lived on social media. Craig, I fucking lived on social media. I was so active on social media, and I just, it was always very effortless. I never ever, I was never felt any anxiety towards it. I was like, oh, I'll just share. Everything that popped into my mind, I just shared. I had my, the phone was almost glued to my hand.
Yeah.
I was, whenever I was walking around, exploring cities, I would just Instagram the whole thing and find things that I thought were pretty or interesting or beautiful, share them up, throw up, it was just a never ending stream of free content.
Yeah.
And it was almost as if my life was being surveilled by myself.
Yeah.
I was a willing participant in this surveillance style of life that blurred the boundaries between the professional and the personal in such a way that I had no idea who the fuck I was anymore.
Gotcha. Yeah.
And I was monetizing every minute of my life in the service of some kind of nebulous professional goal that was not even clear to me.
Right.
And it just became way, way, way too much
Mm-hmm.
to the point where people would start following me because they'd be like, oh, we saw that you snapped this or we saw that you Instagrammed this. So we just came there. And then I would, and then that's not, that's just the nature of having fans or whatever.
Sure, yeah.
They're like, oh, we saw that you were out, so we came out and now we want to be your friend. And I was like, yikes. Oh shit. Okay. Well, I don't really want that.
Yeah.
And it was so strange because
I kind of just want lunch by myself.
I kind of just want to like hang and chill. But it gets into this disingenuous kind of blurred, passive aggressive little dance where you're like, I want to be seen, but don't watch me. I want to put this content up, but you have to pay for it. Or I want everything to be free, but I'm also whatever. And I was like, okay, it's time for a total recalibration of how I choose to be a person, how I choose to approach a professional life, and how I choose to edit all of these features of my life experience in such a way that I can achieve some sense of normalcy after being granted this gift, which also is something of a curse.
Okay, yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, well, you hear this all the time. It's like, well, honey, if you don't want to take a picture with me, why'd you go on reality TV? And I was at Mickey's once, a bar in West Hollywood. I engaged willingly in a 20-minute futile exercise in explaining myself to a drunk person because I had a sunburn and didn't want to take a picture.
Yeah.
It was the usual thing. It was like, well, I thought you were the nice one. Like, wait a minute. You know what? I knew it. I knew you were nice as I thought you were on TV.
Uh-huh.
It was a lot of wasted breath expressing all these points actually quite coherently to this drunk person who then I'm sure woke up the next day with no recollection of the you know what I mean? It was like
right.
It's just it's an exercise in futility. And but on the other hand, it's also funny because it's like I'm saying I want to be famous, but get away. Like, I really want help, but don't touch me. I really want to be included, but but I won't show up. It's such a big learning curve, I think. But what I've discovered is that it's totally okay to say no.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's more than okay to say no, but you have to have the balls to stick to your guns in the moment and say, and to say, no, but thank you.
Right. And whether or not they're going to go into some rant about how you're not. Yeah.
Yeah. And what I've observed when I've looked at the comments, sometimes I'll see that there's a lot of infighting. I'm one of the girls from, or I'm one of the performers from the show that happens to enjoy a pretty large fan base. And every once in a while it comes to my attention that there's like infighting within the fandom or whatever.
Yeah.
It's a lot of foolishness, but it's like, no, don't call her Brian or call her Katya or she doesn't like mom or this, that. And then you got like these kids just squabbling over trivial bullshit on Twitter. And it's like, there's nothing you can do about it. At the end of the day, it's like, I think it's just, you have to realize that you do what you do. A lot of it's falling on deaf ears, and people want out of you what they want out of you. And sometimes you just can't control anything.
Right. And sometimes you can't give them what they want.
Right. And I always go back, like, especially with dealing with this stuff, I always try to go back to the wisdom that Rue imparts so freely and generously, that you want a career in Hollywood, how much rejection and humiliation can you stand? And I really, a lot of the thing is that I really don't like rejection,
right?
Which is why I've worked so hard and been so stubborn about creating my own projects.
Yeah.
And I went on an audition once, and I remember it was for a waiter at a restaurant on a hit show. And they were like, I was so terrified. I was nervous as hell.
Yeah.
And also on drugs, by the way, but that didn't help. But he's like, you can go more gay with it. Just real fag out.
Oh.
And I was like, oh,
yeah,
I just want to leave. And so I just tried it. It failed. I mean, I was there for like 3 seconds, and they're like, all right, thank you, bye.
Right.
Yeah.
And
then the next audition I went on, they were like, I was just me.
Yeah.
And then I got it,
Well, I got it.
Oh shit, sorry about the feet on the couch.
Oh, that's okay.
I'm so uncouth.
That's okay. All right. I'll just bleach it down.
Yeah. But and it's just the putting yourself out there is always like a double-edged sword, because as performers, we're so sensitive, we're so narcissistic, and we're so stubborn, and then we're oh God, I think everybody struggles with it. It's like, I want to just pour my heart out, but then I don't want to be available to any piece of feedback about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, that's also a valid thing.
Yeah.
Why should you have to take?
No.
on that?
Yeah. I don't. And it's I think it's the kind of recoiling from the mess that I made, where I just made myself so available to every piece of criticism and everything, and then I just I'm like, you know what? I don't have to make myself so available. I don't have to be oversaturated. I don't have to be so fraught with anxiety about, is my career going to end if I don't do a gig every day?
Yeah, right.
Right. And it's like, the ability to say no has been tremendous. And, I've had to cut some relationships, not in only the way I knew how, which is not very good.
Mm-hmm.
But it's all learning curve.
It's all learning curve. Most people aren't that skilled at how to end a relationship. It's not something that you get a lesson in, at school.
You certainly don't. And it's, and for sensitive folks and people who are queer, bisexual, transgender, whatever, we're saddled with a lot more mystery about how to have really, my father didn't know how to raise a gay kid.
Sure.
But he did the best damn job he could.
Yeah.
And my parents were extremely skillful in their sensitivity towards my weirdness and my sensitivity and my bizarre nature.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like, we just have to, we got to choose our battles.
Right.
And sometimes we just, I think, Maria Bamford has the funniest bit about, she talks about some, this horrific scene about somebody leaving their pet in a hot car.
Mm-hmm.
And this and she's like, sometimes, they're like, we're all just doing the best we can, and sometimes it's just not very good. But I insist on being open and public about it because I know that from the feedback, I know that it helps people.
Sure.
And maybe it sounds naive or idealistic. I want to help people.
Mm-hmm.
I really do.
Yeah.
I really do. I've always wanted to, but I want to talk to every single person in the goddamn earth.
Well, doing it through a show is a much more efficient way than person by person.
Person to person. Hey, listen, I've done the person to person, and it's quite taxing, but it's also
plus the gas. It's a lot of traveling. Yeah.
Yeah. The mileage has wreaked havoc on my crow's feet. Yeah, it's really tough. But that's why I know going back, I was like, that's why I wanted to learn all these languages.
Right.
You know, I was always wanting to learn. I started with French, and then Latin, and then a little bit of Spanish and Italian, and then Russian, and then a little bit German, and then Japanese, and then like I want to be able to go anywhere and talk to anybody.
Yeah.
And it's like I'm always so fascinated by the thing that scares me the most, and I love that about myself.
Yeah, well, that's the thing we were talking about before, right? Where if you're not uneasy a little bit about something, then maybe it's not as valuable.
Yeah, and it's also, like that was that Shakespeare's it's not Shakespeare, the cliche, the unexamined life is not worth living, and anything worth doing is going to be difficult,
right?
But yeah, I think the biggest takeaway with like fear and anxiety is that you got to realize this disease of this mental dysfunction of being terminally unique is the ultimate ruiner of self-esteem and mental health.
Yeah.
Nobody is unique.
Yeah.
No one.
Right.
Like that is just not, it's just a fiction. Mm-hmm. Everybody's been through it, going through it, or will go through it. Like if you've dreamed of it, there are at least 15,000 people who have written the book about it.
Right. So romanticizing that kind of fear is a common
It's a common thing, and it's a real tough cross to bear.
Yeah.
It's like it's the ultimate alienator from other people and from yourself. Is like, nobody knows my troubles.
Yeah.
Nobody knows. I think of Daphne Zuniga in Spaceballs.
Oh yeah.
Nobody knows the trouble I feel. A Jewish princess. But everybody knows. Everybody knows.
Yeah.
Read a book, Mary.
Yeah.
Everybody knows.
Right.
Reading is fundamental, and I'm not talking about the drag queen version of shade throwing.
Yeah.
I'm talking about the actual reading of books. Like, I remember I've never related more to or looked up to a person and related to such a biting observation and critical perception of reality than I did when I read David Foster Wallace's book, A Supposedly Fun Thing I'll Never Do Again, when he talks about a cruise ship. Mm-hmm. And then I read a bunch of his books, and then he died.
Right.
And I cried my eyes out.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my God, the smartest man on earth decided it wasn't worth it. Fuck. It was the grimmest, most morose experience. Like, I was like, oh my God.
But also one could say mentally ill.
Yeah.
So that, definitely affected his decision making.
Yeah. And, he suffered from extreme performance anxiety when he would, do like Q&As or read book reads at talks at like what do you call it? Like a book tour.
Yeah.
Crippled.
Okay.
With anxiety.
Right.
And I heard a story that he once his like agent or the book promoter, whatever you call it, like forced him to go. He like wanted to leave, and they forced him to stay and do it.
Yeah.
And he was just like unraveling at the seams. And it's like the fear of putting yourself out there for public scrutiny and review is a thing that goes back thousands of years. Everybody hates it.
Yeah.
It's really, really tough.
And it comes in waves too.
Yeah.
Even when you have a good handle on it, it can still sneak up and bite you.
Absolutely. Like life is not linear.
No.
It is not linear. And the accumulation of facts and knowledge does not equal a better person necessarily. I think mostly the betterment of yourself and self-improvement is a process of uncovering and uncluttering and unlearning rather than accumulating.
Right.
And it's getting back to it's like basically you want a Benjamin Button.
So that's easy, right, ladies and gentlemen? Just Benjamin Button it.
Just Benjamin Button yourself. You want to die a baby. There was a restaurant on Comm Ave called Noodle Street. Back in Boston, this is a non sequitur and a tangent, very short. I went on Comm Ave and I went to BU for 1 year, and there was a restaurant called Noodle Street, and I'll never forget on the menu it said, Grandmom says yes.
That was a menu item, or
No,
that
no,
was
no.
just a statement?
It was just a statement, and I believe in like a word
zippy
bubble,
font?
a zippy font,
Yeah.
a zippy cartoonish font, and it was an endorsement of the food.
Sure, Grandmom loves it. Yeah,
Grandmom,
she says yes.
Grandmom, you know what she says? Yes.
So when you're struggling with some fear and anxiety, just think.
Yeah.
Grandmom says
Just
yes.
take it to Noodle Street. You know, just drive it down to Noodle
Baby,
Street.
take it to Noodle Street and come in hot.
We're coming in hot.
Down on Noodle Street.
Pulling out wet, jam it back in dry.
Yeah.
I don't know, Craig. I don't really have much more to say. One little nugget of wisdom I would like to impart, just for my personal journey,
Yes.
is that I, in addition to hardcore narcotics, I am currently detoxifying from an overuse of the the information superhighway, the internet.
Yes. As it's sometimes known.
Yeah, as it is known. And I have to tell you, the clarification of my mind stuffs
Yes.
is formidable and fabulous.
You can feel the difference.
You can taste the difference. It's the true Pepsi challenge of the mind. And like I just mentioned, that David Foster Wallace did also talk about in a speech he delivered at a university commencement ceremony. The choice of what to fill your consciousness with is the critical one.
That's true.
It's what you choose to consume in terms of information.
Yeah.
And also your friends too is like, I'll never forget my man Vinny in rehab said, show me a man's friends and I'll tell you who he is.
Oh, that's true.
You know?
Well, you can judge a person by the company they keep.
Exactly. And, hey, bub, why don't you look around? If you're surrounded with scumbag, bullshit, shit can motherfuckers, there's a good old chance you're one of them.
That's true. So take a good look around and start cutting them down.
Take a look at yourself. Yeah. So wield that machete with impunity and strike down ye. No, it just
Not really,
no
kids.
Don't
That's,
do that.
of course.
Don't do that.
Yeah.
Keep the machetes in the glove box.
That's right.
Yeah.
Where they're useful for any kind of roadside troubles.
Roadside troubles and jungle explorations.
Which is the theme of next week's episode.
Stay tuned, but we will interview many jungle doctors.
Jungle doctors who had to deal with some roadside troubles. How did they diagnose? How did they treat it? And what were the results at the end?
And here's a hint. It has a lot to do with turmeric. Yeah. Oh, no. I think I'm done. Are you done?
Yeah, I think I'm done.
All right. Well, hey, happy trails to you, and we'll see them all next time.
Yeah, see you next time. Same to you, babe.
Bye.
Good night.
It's whimsically volatile.